Today, of course, the focus is on sample management. So Vida is going to be talking about RS Inventory, our new sample management system, how you can associate sample data with experimental data in RSpace, and then export that to a repository, which we are pretty confident is going to allow a step jump in overall experimental reproducibility. And in particular, it addresses a number of the questions and issues that Robert and Harold have clearly identified. So thank you very much. With that, I will stop and pass over to Vida.
Awesome, thanks, Rory. I'm just gonna share my screen. Can everyone see an inventory system? Amazing. Yeah, so thanks, Rory. So as Rory mentioned, RSpace itself on its own is really good at enabling reproducibility in a uniquely powerful way, but it is really the sample and inventory management system that we want to showcase today, and it's a deep integration with the ELN because it really takes reproducibility to a whole new level. So I'll start by giving you a brief overview of inventory, and then I'll showcase the ELN integration in more depth. So here we have an example inventory with some test samples. So I'm going to show how inventory really is highly customizable, which makes it very powerful, as it can then be extended and configured so that it would be suited for the needs of your community. So here I have an example sample. It has some default properties like an image, a name, an expiry date, a description, and some tags. But what's really important here is that I'm actually creating the sample from a custom antibody template. And so when creating this template, I've defined which fields I want to associate with it. So this is an antibody template. So I have information, a text field, some information about the antigen, peptide. I have some fields that are checkbox fields that I can select. I have defined a field that's a radio field, so I can only pick one option out of a few. And in this way, I can ensure that I'm creating sample types that are really consistent and allow me to record data in a consistent way. Another thing to mention is here I've created a custom field for an identifier, the IGSN, and I can just paste in a link to that resource's unique ID. Thanks to Jens Klump from Cyro for suggesting adding custom identifiers. And as mentioned in chat and in the questions, this seems to be a really big topic, and that's something we really want to implement. So we'd love to engage with researchers to figure out which identifier schemes we should support by default, for example, by providing just like a drop-down list that you can select from. Just a really easy to use way to link all of the inventory items with their actual persistent identifiers. So especially from the geo and non-bio community. So please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. So a little bit more about sample templates. Let me just scroll back up and open the information on this template. Here's again a recap of all of the fields I've created. Let me click on the template, and here let me edit it. So if I scroll down, I can see here that I can really customize things deeply. So maybe these subsamples I'm working on actually are not called subsamples, but I want to call them pieces or portions or units, and I want that to be reflected throughout the inventory system. You can do that. Maybe the quantity I'm working on is a volume and it's liters, or maybe it's mass, or maybe it's completely unitless. And again, I want that to be reflected in the system and for the sample type. And I can just do that. And here are some fields examples. We can set default values. So that's really nifty, and again quite easy to use. Now you might want to create a field for let's say safety fields to link to a PDF of the sample information regarding safety, or have required fields for reports. And again, you can all do that. That's supported by the system. Now let me quickly go back to my sample. Yeah, we don't want to edit that. And as you can see, as I'm navigating through a little bit here, it is quite, oh, let me just check if, oh, okay, there's just some notifications in chat. Okay, everything's working. So we have quite a modern, simple interface because we really want to make sure that we're showcasing all of the important information without overwhelming you with of information. So we're continuously reworking the interface to be minimalistic, but still provide a lot of power. One thing is, for example, let me scroll down, let me select the subsample. When I'm working with samples, I want to know right away, okay, where is this subsample? Well, that's straightforward. You just got a breadcrumb link here at the top, and this shows me that this antibody is in a tube grid, which is in a large box, which is in a container rack. And now I can click on those breadcrumbs to actually load in that specific container and have a look. Okay, this is a grid container. I've got some items. I can hover over the info icons to see core information about that sample. Maybe I want to go to its parent container. Okay, well, let's click on large box here, see the parent container. This is an example of a visual container. So because this container has a bit of a weird shape, maybe I've decided, okay, I want the inventory system to really replicate what the physical container looks like. So I'm going to take a picture and I'm going to set a few locations in the system. Okay, this first row can only handle 2 locations. This one can only handle 1, and so on. And then I can move the specific aliquots or containers into this bigger container, again, really enhancing the visuality aspect of an inventory system, which is really important. Another aspect is that not only do we have different container types, we also have different ways of viewing them. So for example, maybe visual container view is not exactly what I want right now. I might want a card view where I see images and then core information about each item. Or let's say I'm navigating containers. And when I'm navigating containers, that's a bit like navigating a file hierarchy, right? So I might want to switch to tree view. And here I might want to click on items and then expand into different containers to be able to see and find the exact items I want. So again, not only is there real flexibility in how you name and how you create items, but there's also a lot of flexibility in how you might want to see and interact with items, which is really, really nice. So that was very quick, but now let's switch over to specifically the ELN. So here we've got an ELN document, just pretty classic. You've got some fields, we've got some tables, some entries. Now notice on the right-hand side here, we've got little inventory icons. Now, if you click on one of these icons, you'll access the list of materials. So the ELN integration is really about enhancing reproducibility by making it possible to include reliable data about the samples used in the experimental records. So let me open the list of materials here. I can click on add items to add some items in a very specific interface that we're just reusing as well in inventory. It's very straightforward and powerful search, which allows you to really find the items you need. And here is a table of the subsamples that I've pulled in for this specific experiment. So it's got all of the essential information you need. So let's hover over the info buttons. We get some essential information. We have some quantities. I'll explain this in a little bit. We've got the location so that you can just click on the specific location of an item and be able to access that container to figure out where that exact item is and be able to find it. And if the item is moved in inventory, this location column will update. So you'll always have the most up-to-date location. Then the global ID, this is very important. This is the RSpace persistent and unique identifier for that item. You might have noticed as I was navigating around the interface here, we've got this column here in list view, always of the global ID of that item, whether we're viewing containers, templates, or samples. And we've also got this global ID on the top right here. So it is created and associated with an item right when we first create that item. And it is also included in the ELN integration to make sure that you are always linking in a very unique way to that specific item inside of inventory. So actually it's clickable. So if I click on it, I just open that resource in inventory and can access all of its properties. But it also means that we're always keeping inventory and the ELN and the list of materials in sync, because we're not just kind of importing or copy pasting this information from inventory, we're dynamically linking to it. And that is very important in highly dynamic labs where, you know, the location might change and you need the location column to update. You know, the name or maybe the core information might change. You need that all to be updated inside of the ELN as well. Now, when you're working with samples, one common workflow is that you want your experimental record to accurately portray how much you've used of a specific item. So that is something you can do just simply by editing the consumed quantity of an item. Here I'm setting it to 3 milliliters, and you can see automatically the inventory quantity is reduced to reflect the fact that, you know, you've had a reduction in the quantity of your sample, and this specific quantity is automatically synced with inventory. So if you're browsing inventory, you'll be able to see, okay, I'm running low on this specific sample. Let me make sure to, you know, restock. And if someone in inventory edits that sample's quantity, you'll see it in your list of materials as, oh, okay, I'm not having enough for this experiment. I'm going to have to do something about it. So it's a very powerful way of making sure that everything is kept consistent and in sync, and that you're always handling the most up-to-date data for your research. Now, let me show you a few other features. Let's say, you know, you want a print or a PDF version of your document. That's super easy. You can just print. And when printing and having list of materials attached to your experiment, they will just be dynamically added to the PDF. So you'll have nicely formatted tables, exactly like in the panel, if you wanted to print out the contents alongside the actual experimental records. Now, something else you might want to do is, as we were mentioning repositories, you know, you're finished with your experiment, you're quite happy with how everything went, and you want to share your research with the world, and you might want to export to Dataverse or maybe Figshare. So I'll quickly demo that. We have an export button here for the experiment. You can generate a file of like a bundle of web files. You can generate an XML bundle, which is great for re-importing into RSpace or for archival. So all the data associated with your experiment, a PDF file, a doc file. I'm going to choose a PDF file, and I'm going to choose to export to a repository. So I can choose some details on what I want to actually include. So do I want to include the comments made to this document? Maybe I've collaborated with different people and we've made a lot of comments on it, different PDF formats. Now, this is the interesting part. I've already set up a Dataverse integration. I mean, I know a lot of us are in this event are research data managers, so you'll know what Dataverse is, but just to quickly recap, the Dataverse project is a data repository specifically focused on open science. So you can make your research data available to others and make it more easy to replicate and research, as well as make your own research more replicable, and you can your work can easily be cited, explored, and analyzed. So it's really pretty nifty. So here, let me write test RDA exports. Let's say this is a test description. Just a bit of a typo here. Let me say this is medicine, health, and life sciences, and it's a draft. You can add some authors based on who contributed to this research. I'm just going to click on export. And again, integrations are really the strength of RSpace because it minimizes the amount of work you need to do for very common workflows. So here we can see a notification. Cool. Let's open this link for the Dataverse export. And here we go. We've got our export with all of the information already saved into it. And we can open the PDF. And as we can see here, again, we have all of the information for the experiment that's been recorded in it. But most importantly, all of the item global IDs are also recorded in the export, the type, whether it's a subsample or container, the name, how much of the actual sample we've used in that experiment. So as a result, as soon as we create an item in inventory, it has that global ID attached to it. And then when we are using an item in the ELN integration, we still have that global ID as a way to access that resource. And then after exporting, we still retain all of the sample information embedded within the experiment to make sure that it never gets lost. So that was a very, very quick overview of RSpace inventory. And it's focused on being customizable, intuitive, and then also tightly integrated with the ELN, which enables you to associate sample information with the experimental records and maintain this information in exports of your research, enhancing reproducibility. So we have plans for further ELN inventory integration to make the system even more powerful. This is just phase one. In the next phases, we'd like to make sure that on the sample page in inventory, we maintain links to the experiments in which a sample has been used. So basically the opposite of a list of materials, have like a list of experiments. And also we want to record sample provenance so that you can store links to the parent sample and child sample and the other way around. And we also will generate audit trail entries for when samples are associated with experiments to better keep track of how a sample has been used. So RSpace inventory is having its production release on September the 8th, but an alpha test version is available already, and it is updated regularly with the newest features as we move towards the production release. This open development enables us to really take in feedback from researchers and has been really invaluable. So if you'd like to check it out, I think in chat, Esther will pop in the link to our RSpace inventory hub, as well as my email. And we'd really love to engage with you and hear from you. The inventory hub also has a detailed ELN integration video from our latest release if you want to see more of the actual details of how it works and the features included, alongside all of the documentation for that. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, please feel free to ask any questions about all of the things we've covered today, and I'm looking forward to answering them.